hashing function that these languages use. And then they would construct requests such that they would get hash collisions. So for example, when you make a post request against PHP, we have a post array of variables. So if you have lots of form fields with various names, like name, age, address 1, address 2, phone number, these are all post fields, and they end up in an array of post variables. Each of these array keys basically become a hash index, and we hash that. And if you name your variables, your field names, in a very precise way, you can cause the hash algorithm to hash them all to the same bucket. And the way all hash algorithms work, the buckets are basically just linked lists. Right? So the first item ends in the bucket, it's there. When you then hash to fetch it, you just fetch it. But if a second item ends in the same bucket, you get there, it's like, oh, there's already something in this bucket. Well, we're just going to make a linked list and link, so there's 2. Right? If you have a million items that all land in the same bucket, your hashing is completely broken. Because now to get to this item, you have to go to the bucket, and then you have to follow a million links to find your item. So now it becomes a sequential search, basically, as opposed to a hash poof. Get it? It's a hash, sequential search to find it at this point. And that really slows everything down. And if you put enough elements into this bucket, you've killed the server. The server is sitting there doing nothing but traversing linked lists all the time. Every time it needs to add a new one, it has to link all the way to the end of the list, then add it. Next one comes in, now we have to do a million traversals to put the next one in. Really bad. So, basically, we could have tried to fix our hashing algorithm to not be vulnerable to this, but all the fixes for that would have slowed it down by quite a bit. And we do so many hashing operations on every request that having a slower hashing algorithm would really hurt performance. So instead we just said, screw it. We're just going to limit the amount of post fields, basically. So the amount of get, post, and cookies a request can take. So we set it arbitrarily to 1,000. So if you have more than 1,000 form fields, it's going to break with 5.4. You might have to increase this limit. Hopefully you don't have more than 1,000 form fields. What kind of user is going to fill out a form that has more than 1,000 entries on a single page? Right? That's a lot of things to fill out. Same goes for get. Get requests aren't as bad because you really can't fit more than 1,000 into the URL string. There are limits that the browsers impose. You just don't let it. Right? Cookies, there are also limits on how many cookies a browser will send. So you can't really have 1,000 cookies anyway. So the only real restriction is that post requests might hit this. Normal form post is probably not going to hit it because you're not going to have 1,000 form fields. But what could hit this limit are API type things. PayPal's instant payment notification, for example. If you have a lot of things in your shopping cart and you have an instant payment notification endpoint in your PHP application, you could end up with more than 1,000 post fields coming from a PayPal IPM thing. Then you might have to increase it. So it's one of the things that can break when you're upgrading your PHP. Some new keywords, and then a couple of minor things that aren't really that interesting. Next. PHP 5.5 has a few more performance improvements, not as drastic as 5.4, but still some nice ones. The big thing is the bundled opcode cache. So that now, with every new PHP release, we're going to have a very robust opcode cache ready to go. Prior to PHP 5.5, people were always waiting. We released a new version of PHP, and then people were waiting for the opcode caches to catch up, which was not a useful way of doing things. Because any real PHP site has to have an opcode cache. So it was useless that we released a new version of PHP that people couldn't use until the opcode cache was released. So now we have it in sync. And it will be easier for people. The big new feature in 5.5 are generators. So a generator is basically a way of yielding a value from within a function and keeping the context. So this xrange function here, you basically